Hi Hokies, welcome back to Ask the Dietitian. I'm Julia, a dietetic intern with Hokie Wellness, and I have another Ask the Dietitian question for you guys today. So today's question is asking for diet advice for women struggling with PCOS. So I really do love this question. I think PCOS has really grown over the last few years, and there's not as much research around it. It's growing though. So I think a few years ago, the known percentage of women with PCOS was like 6%, and now it's grown to about 20% of women have PCOS that are within reproductive age. So it is definitely something that needs to be talked about more, and there needs to be more research on it. But let's talk about a diet for PCOS. So first of all, PCOS is an endocrine disorder or a hormonal disorder that can cause symptoms like menstrual irregularity, hair growth, acne, obesity. To think about with PCOS is it can increase your risk for things like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, other illnesses like that. And this is not at all to say that if you are diagnosed with PCOS that you are destined to have poor health. That's not what I'm saying at all, but changing your diet or incorporating more things into your diet is a really great way to kind of take control of a diagnosis and to manage your symptoms and just to keep yourself healthy. So let's get into the diet for PCOS. So PCOS has been shown through evidence that it really increases inflammation all over the body. So what we want to do is try and eat an anti-inflammatory diet. So we're going to go through what foods can increase inflammation and what foods can help decrease it. So foods to avoid or minimize are things like fried food. So those are going to lead to inflammation in the body. So French fries, potato chips, fried chicken, fried fish, anything fried can add to inflammation in the body. And they're also usually really high in saturated fats, which is another thing on our list of things to avoid. So saturated fats, so things like butter, margarine, lots of processed foods have saturated fat in them. So trying to minimize those or use butter less. Red meat can increase inflammation in the body, so hamburgers, steaks, things like that. Also lunch meat, so processed like deli meat and other processed meats, so things like sausage, hot dogs, salami. I'm trying to think of other processed meats, but red meat and processed meats. Processed snacks, so cookies, cakes, pies. Cereal that's really high in sugar. So when looking at a food label, there's usually under carbohydrates, there's usually an added sugar line. If that's a really high number under added sugar, I would just look for a different option. You want to try and keep those added sugars low. So next we've got sugary beverages. So in general, it's best not to, or I think it's easier to think about it in a way of not drinking your calories. So trying to avoid sugary beverages like soda, sweetened coffees, sports drinks, energy drinks, things like that. That's a tough one for some people, but watch your sugary beverages. Next is alcoholic beverages. I know this one's also challenging, but it does really lead to inflammation, can affect your gut health. So the recommendation for women is 1 drink per day. I would stick with that recommendation. It would really help your health. And then lastly on this list is refined flour, white bread, white pasta, white rice, white pizza crust. So going for whole grains, whole wheat, brown rice is the recommendation there. So the best foods for PCOS, I've gone through all the foods to avoid, which are like all the yummy things, right? Kidding. But the best foods for PCOS, so omega-3 rich foods. So fish is really great for this. Salmon's a really good one that's high in omega-3s. walnuts, chia seeds, those are all really high in omega-3s. Olive oil. So you can use olive oil in place of that butter or margarine to kind of reduce those saturated fats. Olive oil is a really great source of fat for you. Beans and other like legumes, lentils in place of meat. So this is a tough one, especially if you are used to eating meat. If you've grown up eating meat and that's normal, it's hard to replace it. So I would try and make small changes. So maybe changing 2 meals out to be plant-based protein. So using beans in place of meat. So beans and rice is a really great combo to make a complete protein. Lots of like Buddha bowls, if you've heard of those, are really good. So that's usually like quinoa and chickpeas. One of my friends, she's vegan, she loves to make black bean sweet potato tacos. They're great. I highly recommend that recipe. So just kind of playing around with other plant-based protein options. Meat is usually inflammatory. Red meat. Non-starchy vegetables. Eat as many non-starchy vegetables as you can. So I think it's easier to know what the starchy vegetables are, and then everything else is non-starchy. So like our starchy vegetables are corn, peas, potatoes, and beans, which I know I just told you to eat beans, but everything else that's not those 4 is a non-starchy vegetable. So all your leafy greens, spinach, kale, arugula, lettuce, all those, and then all the other vegetables, green beans, broccoli, tomatoes, mushrooms, peppers, cauliflower, celery, carrots. The list is way longer on non-starchy vegetables. So eat all of those. They're so good for you. Whole grains, so just switching up for a whole grain pasta or whole wheat bread, brown rice, just kind of making switches here and there. With PCOS, it can increase your risk for insulin resistance, and that just increases your risk for diabetes. So it's something to be aware of, to think about those blood sugar spikes. So white pasta or bread, they absorb into your system and into your bloodstream a lot quicker than whole grains. So whole grains, it takes your body a little bit longer to digest and process it, so it doesn't get into your bloodstream as fast and cause that blood sugar spike, just to kind of explain the science behind it. And whole fruit. So instead of juices, which again get into your bloodstream really fast, eat whole fruit. With fruit as its whole form, I can't think of another word for whole, but an apple or banana or berries, they have fiber in them when you don't mix them up into a juice. So the fiber in whole fruit can help you feel full, helps with your digestion. Very good. The other thing with PCOS is to stay super hydrated, so lots of water, which we would all benefit from. So basically, what to eat with PCOS is essentially the Mediterranean diet. So I'm not saying you need to overhaul your diet. I would just try and shift some things towards a Mediterranean diet style and try and eat more like that. So just making little changes, a couple substitutions. Doesn't have to be 100% Mediterranean diet, but just make a couple changes. See if you're feeling better, see if your symptoms are better managed. So just an overview of the Mediterranean diet. It's basically 5 components: fruits and veggies, whole grains, seafood, nuts and legumes, and olive oil. So kind of making the switch, eating more fish and beans for protein instead of meat, eating lots of veggies, using olive oil instead of butter, whole grains instead of white. That is basically the gist. I would definitely recommend going and seeing a dietitian so that they could personalize your meal plan if you're really struggling. They're really helpful, I think. Maybe I'm biased. But yes, I hope this answered your question, made you feel like you have a little bit more knowledge on a diet for PCOS. But please comment below if you have any more questions, and like and subscribe to Hokey Wellness. Thank you guys so much.